I guess he did say stop talking.
Behave, boys.
You're feeling good. Good Friday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and thank you kindly for joining us on Real Talk with Keith Smith. It's an absolute pleasure to connect with you guys through our network in downtown Charlottesville on a show presented by Yes Realty Partners, a name you can trust. Keith and Yonna Smith have been in the game since 1987, and if there's a team or a brokerage that can get you to the closing table and beyond, the folks over at YRP and Yes Realty Partners have proven their skill set and their level of capacity and experience. For goodness gracious, not that they're old, but we're nearly 30 plus, we're over 30 years. What, we're 40 years almost in the game? Almost 40 years in the game we call real estate.
It's more than this.
It's more than 10, yeah.
I can't count much above that. I get a little confused when it's over that many.
Viewers and listeners, put your comments in the feed. Ask your questions with Keith Smith, and he'll happily answer them. Judah Wickower, the beloved Judah Wickower, who's becoming a known name in households across a 300,000 person region we call Central Virginia.
I get that. I hear that actually.
We get emails about Judah.
I get texts about Judah. I get texts about Smith and Miller, shut up and let's see what Judah's got to say.
We've thought about selling a T-shirt with just Judah's face on it and Jack of all trades below it and asking $30 for it and kicking Judah $5 for the licensing fee.
Oh, $5?
$5.
Judah, do me a favor.
Don't let him negotiate that deal.
Let me negotiate this for you. You're getting screwed.
He's not getting, for doing nothing, $5 a unit?
The dude does everything.
$5 a unit for selling a shirt? All right.
He does everything. All we do is talk.
We have fun. We have the easy job, and thanks to Judah Wickower, we get to do it. All right, Keith Smith in the mix.
Judah, don't take $5, brother. You can do better than that.
My friend, the show is yours. Why don't you start with an open-ended monologue for you.
An open-ended monologue. What do I look like, Jimmy Fallon?
What have you been following real estate-wise?
Yeah, so Judah, if you don't mind, while I talk, can you put this up? So look, What's the big fancy word? Profintic? I can't say it. Anyway, I've been talking for the last couple of years about keep an eye on the generational side of things, right? Is this really a generational tug of war? We've been talking about interest rates, we've been talking about inventory, and we've been talking about pricing, and get to the point that we're getting kind of tired of it, and I guess people are getting tired of it. But the data's in, right? And I think Judah has this on the screen. Us boomers, us gray hairs, we're in a world.
It's not just the gray hairs that are boomers. Trust me, I'm learning that in real time over here. It's funny how God says, "Hey, you're gonna get less hair on the top of your head, more hair on your ear and your nose, and more hair on your back, but less on the top of head where you want it."
It's funny you should say that. I was at a planning district commission meeting yesterday, sitting next to Tony O'Brien, having that exact conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, God. Thank you, God.
Look at this. You got chest hair. I've never had chest hair my whole life.
Chest hair, ear hair, nose hair, shoulder hair. Where's my head hair?
The ear is the worst. And then your eyebrows kind of go wacky.
Constantly trimming the ear hair, aren't you?
Yeah.
Not you in general.
No, I trim them.
Yeah, I trim it too. Same.
I'm vain enough to go ahead and make sure.
Thank God.
Yeah. So can we talk numbers?
We can talk numbers, my friend.
Not chest hair?
We can talk anything you want.
Air hair? Jeez almighty. Today's Friday, right?
Today's Friday.
There you go. So boomers, 60 to 78. Mr. Smith falls into that category. As of NAR's statistics, they call it the 2025 NAR generational report, but it's really 24 numbers, right? In 2024, 42% of all the buyers were in the boomer category. That's numbers never been seen before. And, I was thinking about coming on the show. I said, what does this mean? We're in uncharted territory. There's no expert. If anybody tells you if they really know what this means, they're kind of BSing you.
Right.
Millennials, a 24% drop. So the millennial buyer dropped year over year, 24%, went from in 2024, it was 29%. In 23, it was 38%. That's a 23-point yada, 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 yada. I rounded it up to 24. Gen Z was only about 3%. Judah was asking about Gen X. I got that written down. You guys were 22% of the sales. You kind of been stuck in the mud. It really hasn't changed much over the years. We talked about this in the show the other day. The average age of a buyer now, first-time home buyer, is 38. That's an all-time high. So we're
Older than ever.
We're seeing the largest share ever on record of boomers buying, boomers in the market. We're seeing the first-time home buyer at 38. And we talked about this. I called this last year when we started going over this. Look for the 14% of multi-generational to jump to somewhere around 17 or 18%. And I nailed it. It's 17%. So these are numbers we've never seen before. And, I threw it out there on a Facebook post to see what the folks listening and watching kind of think about this. I'm almost afraid to say this, but could this be a bubble? Right?
Why would it be a bubble?
I don't know. I just...
Man, somewhere Kevin Yancey's licking his chops right now.
Yeah.
Love you, Kevin Yancey.
Always
need a bear in the mix.
Is this sustainable? What does this mean long term? It's an area that we've never seen before. Nobody that sat in this seat or your seat or that's been in this business that has a pulse right now has ever seen that boomers, the age of 60 to 78 is the market. And we talked about this on the show a bunch of times. The millennial buyer and the boomer were looking for the same stuff, right? Same house, same product type, same location, same everything. So I just wanted to kick off with that and see where the show goes.
Viewers and listeners, let us know your thoughts, and we will relay them live on air. Travis Hackworth, Georgia Gilmer, welcome to the program. Philip Dow in Scottsville, Logan Wells Claylow, Gary Palmer. Gary, we got to get you on the show. Carly Wagner, Lloyd Snook, Colleen Tyler, you're excellent at your job. Tom Powell, Sarah Hill Buchensky. We have firms of 1, 2, 3, 4 representatives from 5 firms on the show right now.
And the question is, to those folks, what are they seeing is out there in the market? These are national numbers, right?
What do you think, Ricardo Cruz Duran?
So what's happening in your marketplace? And there's another stat here that's not on that. It's in my post. And I think this is more important than most. They're projecting in the next decade 6.8 million new household formations versus 11.2, which was started in the 2000s. So there are less new house formations. So these are people getting married, having kids, that kind of thing.
Well, you know why that is. People are getting married later now, and it's certainly having kids later now because of affordability. Certainly the kids because of affordability. Don't ask me specifics. In the family, loved ones, year plus, approaching the year marker of marriage, and they're just like, we're going to wait to have kids. We want to get in a house first. We want to get out of a renter position into a home ownership position, and they can't get into the home ownership position. So they're just like, let's wait to have kids.
Yeah, and that's why the first-time home buyer's at 38.
Right.
Right, and they're trying to do this. The flip, I think what I'm concerned about is what does this mean long-term, 5, 10 years down the line? Now, let's be honest. The 60 to 78 crew, which is what I'm into, we've kind of got a time date stamp, right?
No.
Yeah, well,
I had this conversation with my cousin. The life expectancy of even the boomer is longer than ever.
Yeah, but
Keith, you're going to flirt with 100.
No,
How old's your pop?
85.
You don't think you'll flirt with 100 with technology advancements?
I want to float as far. I want to float as far 100%.
God willing.
100%. I want to float as far as I can, as healthy as I can. Okay. When I'm not healthy, dig a hole, put me in the hole, and
so morbid.
And no, it's just a reality. I don't want to live that kind of life.
What are you, a Gen Xer, Judah?
He's a Gen Xer, yeah.
Gen Xers are going to flirt with 100 and change.
I think this was a much bigger conversation, but I'm really curious. I've been digesting this for a week. What does this really mean for the market? Because that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to help people buy and sell. And are we starting to see this tug of war, right? This more, you can see it out there. And I think the younger people that I'm helping, they're not angry, they're not upset, but they understand the reality of where they're at, right? And they understand the reality of, okay, I'm probably competing against you horrible boomer, right, who has cash, right?
Well, the same boomer that's saying to the young millennial and the Gen Zer, in my day, we had 18% interest rates, and I was still able to afford to buy a house. Why don't you buy one less latte and save it for your down payment on your home?
Dude, I do not sound like that.
No. A lot of boomers do say that, though.
Yeah. Well, and that's okay. That's probably because those boomers haven't sat at a coffee shop or a kitchen table.
They don't
staring
get it.
in a young couple's face and going, I can't help you, right? We've got to stay in the fight, and we got to keep on pushing and keep on making the fight work. But the ones that I'm working with,
well said, Keith.
The ones that I'm working with, they get it. Right? They go, okay, look, we're going to have to do this. We're having this conversation about, though 20% down payment is kind of not like a given, right? You can get loans with 3% or something like that.
FHA, VA.
I just was on the phone with a loan officer just before the show talking about that. Tammy Wiltz, she's
about 3.5%, 5%?
Yeah, about 3%.
Yeah.
So, but if I'm in a multiple bid situation,
you're in a tough spot. You may not win it.
You may not win it, right? And this is the conversation you have to have with these young buyers. Are going, look, we need to position you for the best chance of success. Now, here's a positive. Let's spin a little bit of a positive to it. And this is something I'm starting to see a little bit. These later buyers, these 30, 32s, 38s, right? If they did, now here comes the boomer thing. If they did buy one less of these, right? I'm finding they're putting cash aside, right? They're in income situations where they can do that. They're in income situations where they're delaying having a child, which is, as you know, a little expensive.
It's extremely expensive.
But
they're two of them. Good
they're
God.
Coming in with 20, 30, 40% cash, the ones I'm talking to at the moment. So I can see those folks will be able to compete against the gray hairs, right? If you're competing against full cash, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to beat that. But the people that only have the 3% down or something like that, this is a tough row to hoe, and you just got to stay in the fight.
Neil Williamson, hello. Love you, Neil Williamson.
Hey, Neil. How you doing?
President of the Free Enterprise Forum.
Support him, please.
Support Neil Williamson. Did a great job on Jay James's show. Was it yesterday, Neil?
I think it was yesterday.
I think it was yesterday. Maybe the day before. Excellent work, Neil. Viewers and listeners, let us know your thoughts. Look, here's the nitty gritty. I talked about this yesterday on the I Love CVille show. Are we going to get more inventory in the Central Virginia market? We have some obvious headwinds. Let me break down the headwinds for you, okay? You ready for this?
I am. I just.
And then I'll break down the tailwinds and the headwinds for you.
Yeah.
16%. In fact, it's more than 16% of the Commonwealth of Virginia's workforce, full-time and part-time, is tied to federal jobs. More than 16%, ladies and gentlemen. That 16% right now is in the crossfire of Doge, Elon Musk, and the Trump administration. Headwind number one. We know there's a boatload of federal workers in Central Virginia because a paper that was commissioned by Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville and the Chamber of Commerce put in perspective that the economy locally is driven by the spy sector, NGIC, these alphabets, to the tune of $1.3 billion per year. What's the vulnerability they face? We don't know. Here's an interesting tidbit for you, Keith Smith. Federal funding at the University of Virginia, the top earner of federal funding of any educational institution of higher learning in the Commonwealth of Virginia, it is UVA. They are getting an extreme amount of money, ladies and gentlemen, to the tune of $354 million, almost $355 million to be exact. That's a headwind because research funding is in the crossfire of Musk, Doge, the Trump administration. On top of that, Jim Ryan's freezing performance-based bonuses, cost of living raises, new hires, and discretionary spending. The stock market is going to be a roller coaster ride. It has been this week, and it's going to be a roller coaster ride moving forward. The market's going to trade based on the commentary from one man, the President of the United States of America, and not just U.S. markets, but global markets. The confidence of consumers in this market, I don't care what anyone says, is tied to what these indices are doing on Wall Street. That's just a fact. Our retirement portfolio determines on how bullish we are, how bearish we are with our outlook on life. That's just human nature. Those are a lot of headwinds here. Some folks would say, as maybe federal workers are called back to work in D.C., that maybe inventory is going to come on the market in Charlottesville and Central Virginia. I don't buy it. Where are we with inventory? And is your prediction, as we're now smack dab in the middle of the second quarter of 2025, that inventory will uptick, which potentially could alleviate a housing crisis we have? I don't think so.
Okay, so I took notes.
Yeah,
a lot to pick
please,
apart.
please.
A lot to pick apart there. Look, I don't. I'm pretty sure the spy industry isn't going to go away, right? I think that one is probably safe. That's just a guess on my part. But what you're trying to do is tie those things into the housing industry and the inventory and pricing. So I'm going to do the standard political answer. Only time will tell, which is like a BS answer, right? And we're on a talk show, so I'm apparently
Supposed to give an opinion.
I'm supposed to give an opinion and an answer on it. I'm just going to stick with what we've been saying forever. Everybody thought COVID was going to be the end of the world, right? Inventory was going to go away or whatever. The real estate market was going to implode here. It didn't.
But they're pushed back. During the pandemic, the Federal Reserve said, because of COVID, we're going to give you a 2%, 2.5%, 3% rate. That created a flood of demand.
I got it.
That's not happening now.
And I think that was a mistake.
Huge mistake in retrospect. We see that it was a mistake.
Yeah.
Caused inflation and screwed a lot of potential home buyers.
And
now it screwed a lot of potential home buyers.
So depending on who you talk to, and I've said this 102 times on the show, it depends on who you talk to. After the time of great unpleasantness until now, we're just short so many millions of units. Some people say 6, some people say 9. Nobody really knows what it is. We know it's substantial. Even if you had a 16% change, right? 16% more houses just came on the market in the Charlottesville area. It's still not going to meet the demand, right? The demand is so high. And this thing that we're trying to talk about, this 42%, right? This 42% of the boomers, and I haven't checked it yet, I can do it real quick up for year to date on it. We talk about how many of the transactions are cash. I think we're still hovering around a third, at least 30% of it for sure, are cash. This has these huge impacts on the market and driving prices up. I think when we look at this at the end of the mid-year, when we do our second quarter analysis on it, we're just going to, some micro areas might take a bit of a hit, but prices are going to continue to climb. And, I get all these headwinds, I get all of that, and this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be watching them and advising people the best way we can on it. But if you're ready to sell, it's time to sell. If you're ready to buy, it's time to buy. If you're trying to time the market and think all of a sudden because of these headwinds that the prices are going to drop 10% or 2% or 3% or whatever year over year, folks, that's just not going to happen.
I don't think the prices are going to drop either.
Now we're starting to see, I track this once a week, daily actually. We're starting to see things like, I'm looking at right now, 126 new homes came on the market in the last 7 days in the car footprint. 107 went pending, right? So that's kind of good, right? We got a little bit more that's coming on than's going pending, which is a trend I think in the right direction. And we're starting to see, if we go back and compare this, which I can do, from the same week a year ago on it, I think you're looking at more homes hitting the market, which is great. So I think we're getting closer to a healthier, as far as inventory goes, balance or market on it. But look, I can't do anything better than what I've been saying forever. We're at the people are at the 20-foot side of the pool. Inventory's at the kiddie pool. Maybe the kiddie pool might go to the 3-foot side of the pool. It may climb a little bit, but that pent-up demand, that pent-up need to go ahead and buy just isn't going away. And, the cash buyer and the boomer buyer, I mean, we had a 24% drop year over year in millennial buyers. That's not like 1 or 2%.
No.
That's a
massive drop.
That's a
massive
huge number. And these millennials are just parked on the side. They're smart.
Seeing it literally in my family.
They're smart people, right? They're not happy. Definitively not happy.
The couple that's in my family is making bank.
And they're putting money aside.
Earning legitimate money.
And then one of the 5 Ds kick in, right?
White collar jobs.
One of the 5 Ds are going to kick in, whatever they are going to be, right? And then they're going to start buying. They're going to start looking, okay, let's get on this equity train, this appreciation train that everybody's on. I also think, or I've seen this since 1987, when you look at that going up and down.
He's talking stock market. In fact, I should put the screen on TV. Yeah, I think we're flat right now.
But
it's been tumultuous this week. I mean,
when it's a roller coaster,
everyone's down since the Trump administration started. It's not about politics; it's just a fact.
Oh yeah, well, when it was down, I bought, so
yeah,
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
But when that starts going up and down, people tend to migrate towards real estate, and that impact hasn't happened yet, right? We don't have enough units to buy. We're not producing enough units to buy. This little. Judah, if you don't mind putting this on.
Oh, I love the picture-in-picture on the studio camera shot with the Real Talk branding position. We've introduced a new shot. I should show it to Keith.
Oh,
a new studio shot as the
they don't
technology continues to improve. Look, it's the picture-in-picture over the studio camera shot with the Real Talk branding in the center. Yeah. Look at the screen.
So
the technology's advancing here.
So they know enough not to let Smith look at that stuff live because his ADD will kick in.
Every month we do advancements with the network and technology.
But
a lot of people don't know that.
Thank you, buddy. But when you take this, if you look at this, thank you, Judah. If you look at this and don't think the only way we're going to get out of this, in my opinion, is figuring out a way to produce more. The boomers going to keep on coming down here. The boomers are going to put pressure on stuff. Eventually there's going to be less boomers, right? Because it's just attrition, right? It just happens. It's life, right?
Except to our friend Keith Smith.
No. So it's going to attrition down, but eventually, it's just going to be this continued pressure on the inventory. And I'm going to add one little comment. I'm going to shut up. It's going to add additional pressure on properties that are in the right location, at the right price, with the right features and the right conditions. Those are going to be hot properties.
Happening in our neighborhood. We live in Ivy.
100%.
As soon as they go on the market, within 2 or 3 days.
And if you don't hit one of these 4, you might not be in the. So don't think in the unicorn years. I mean, if you had 4 walls and a roof and you had a bunch of multiple offers, you're not going to see that.
Just had a bidding war on one down the street from us. Multiple offer bidding war, under contract in 3 days. Here's a great comment from Jamie Turner, mayor of Gordonsville, repping the Pep and Culpeper. Jamie Turner, when you watch the program, I try to get to your comment right away, dude.
Makes me better.
He says 42%. He shares a piece of data, a KPI that's floating around. Here's the KPI. Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
41.8%. Let's just call it 42%, for the sake of a talk show. 42% of U.S. homeowners who sought to refinance their mortgages have received an application rejection. The highest share of refinance rejections in more than 12 years.
Does he have an opinion on why that is?
The percentage has quadrupled since October 2023, according to the New York Fed. Many Americans seeking to refinance to tap into their recently accumulated housing equity are being turned down.
Oh, geez, I wonder why.
This would help to cover the rising costs of living and other debt expenses, but they're not getting the refinance approval. Maybe this creates more inventory on the market as people are strapped for cash. I would imagine people are being turned down at the 42% clip for refinancing, ladies and gentlemen, because their debt profile, their credit score, the carrying costs associated with debt is not very appealing to folks willing to offer refinances.
So we need to bring on a couple of loan officers to cherry pick this apart. But that would be one reason, right? You know, this profile, this credit profile, right, has multiple things in it, right? So
A lot of people just think that if you have a boatload of equity, that a
No,
bank is going to
no.
throw you a refinance lifeline,
But
and that's not how it works.
But 42, I can't see that being the reason for the whole 42%. I would love his opinion on that. Why he thinks that's 42%.
I would think that's the primary reason, that the people looking at a refinance just don't look appealing to banks wanting to give them another 30-year mortgage vehicle.
Or maybe they know something we don't know, the banks, right? Maybe they're looking at their balance sheets.
What,
and,
Trump and tariffs, volatility in the markets?
Or I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting stat. I've never heard that or read that before on that. But I could see that, right? You know, look, you know, it's interesting because I would imagine a large percentage of that 42% were at very low interest rates.
I would imagine a large percentage. No, I disagree. I don't agree with that.
So these may be more recent.
Well, yes.
Recent purchases?
I don't agree with that. And why I don't agree with that, if you made a purchase within, say, the last 18 months, you're probably making a purchase north of 7%. And rates dropped, what, last week?
I think it's more than that. I think it's closer to 24 to 36 months.
24 to, yeah.
Yeah.
And rates dropped this past week and
So that
changed to
also
what,
might be
low
it.
sixes?
The bank can look at it and go, well, I'm getting 7.5%.
Yeah, but you're not refinancing often with your lending provider, your initial lending provider. Sometimes you do, but not often.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Sometimes you're shopping elsewhere.
Correct.
Because as you said, why would your current lender say, I'll let you chop off a point and change? The only reason they would do that is because they're getting more interest over the course of a 30.
Yeah, I agree. That's an interesting stat. I'd have to dig a little bit deeper in that.
Gary Palmer, what are your thoughts on that?
Make a couple of phone calls.
Rob Neal, what are your thoughts on that? Ricardo Cruz Durant is watching. Ooh, Ricardo Cruz Durant is in the game.
Cool.
He says this. He's a mortgage lender. Ricardo Cruz Durant says,
It's interesting.
I've seen that with many applicants in the mortgage department. Debt has increased so much that people
there you
often have to be denied, even if they use their equity to pay off debt.
Yeah.
That percentage has definitely increased. Agree with the comment Jerry said.
Yeah.
Rob Neal, who knows the business inside and out.
Well, credit card debt is at an
He said,
all-time high, right?
It's at an all-time high in American history. Credit score and loan to value are no issue. It's the debt to income.
Yeah,
That's the
DTI.
main reason right now. DTI. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill McChesney wants to know, are we in another tightening of lending similar to the period of unpleasantness?
Again, that's a great question. I think we need to bring a couple of lenders in there. I will tell you, we're not having trouble with our buyers getting it, but they're to the points that we're talking about. These are buyers that have been preparing to buy for a while, worked on their credit scores, worked on their DTI, right? So let's just talk a little bit about that. It's a debt to income ratio, right? So if you make X dollars, your credit cards, your cars, your student loan debts, yada, 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 is your debt to income ratio. And then what they do is they look at that and look at what you're going to borrow and put them all together. And if you exceed, in a perfect world, it's like 33%, but nobody really does that. Everybody's in the 40s. Some loan products.
Not everybody.
No, some FHA products let you get closer to the 50% world on that.
That's a slippery slope.
But then you're doing But then you're doing PMI.
Slippery slope.
Yeah, and all this kind of great stuff. But in any event,
You got
usually
50% DTI. One thing goes bad, the house of cards goes crumbling.
and it's so but I didn't look. I can't quote the exact numbers, but we're still kind of anemic on the foreclosure short sale picture, right?
See, I don't think this will lead. Okay, This is a great conversation.
Let me
Please,
jump in
please,
for a
please,
second.
please.
I think a lot of that reason is because those folks that are getting that way, they got so much equity, they're going to say,
Yeah, they sell. Yeah,
the house
right.
and they get out,
Right.
right? We don't have the bubble that popped as far as equity and appreciation goes,
Right.
like we had in a time of great unpleasantness. But, I'm just constantly asking myself, okay, this trend we're on, where we've been growing with value, with sales price, pretty substantial, right? Outpacing incomes for sure, right? Growth of incomes. So where does this plateau? Where does this level? And I'm kind of speaking Kevin Yancey's language to a certain degree.
I don't think it does. I think anyone who thinks that we're going to get to a point where, good God.
Well, I'm not talking downward. I'm talking getting to the point of normal 3 to 6%. Because I'm telling you, look, Albemarle County was 11%. I'll pull up the numbers here. I've got it in another spreadsheet. Just from the end of the year until now, right? That's just in 3 months. I'll let you chime in on it.
I've said this to Kevin. I've said this to the Bears that watch the program all the time. People that keep making the comments, it can't continue this way where housing values appreciate at, call it a 8 to 10, 12% clip year over year, geez Louise, the University of Virginia is saying we're not even going to give our employees a 3% cost of living wage increase. UVA right now is not giving a living wage bonus or increase 3% year over year. They're saying we're not even doing that. So that means, Judah, the next year, the employees that are working at the University of Virginia are losing money. And this is the #1 employer in Central Virginia. Judy, you got a great job. #1 employer in Central Virginia with an endowment of over $14 billion is saying to all its employees, you're not going to get a 3% raise. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen.
So Albemarle County, the end of 2024, this is the median sales price, right, of everything that's sold. This is attached, detached, new construction, yada, 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 was 524. At the end of last quarter, we were at 555. That's a $31,000 increase in median sales price. That's a 5.9% increase. So just in the first quarter alone, at the end of 2024 in Albemarle County, you jumped 6%, 5.9%. That's huge. Now, the city actually went the other way. We've talked about this in a previous show. Flavanna went up 11% from the end of the year until now. Lake Monticello went up 12% from the end of the year to now. Greene County went up 27% from the end of the year to the end of the first quarter. Nelson County went up 8.7%. Our friends in Louisa was the one that went backwards. We went backwards. We talked about that, why I think we're waiting for new construction to hit on that. But across the board, versus other than the city of Charlottesville and Louisa, everything went up, high single digits, and some of them in double digits.
And here's the point, ladies and gentlemen. We have such a large influx of out-of-market buyers, boomers, and folks working remotely or hybridly, that the housing values will not flatline. They will not go southward. The local right here that is not getting the cost of living raise, the University of Virginia, is in a very tough spot because the quality, the cost of living is not going to drop.
And as UVA goes, the rest of us goes.
Well, I don't know if
that's the canary in the coal mine, right? If UVA wasn't here, we wouldn't be doing this show, right?
Definitely. Right. But I think that impact is not as significant as it once was 25 years ago.
Oh, that I would agree with, right? Because we have other influences in here. You just mentioned it,
1.3 billion spies.
The DOD is in it.
Tourism, hospitality. Hybrid remote work.
But look, unfortunately, we can track this. NAR can track this stuff nationally. We do not. At least I don't have the ability to track it local, right? So, how many of the buyers, and we've talked about this before, and I've actually reached out to UVA, help me out. Not Darden. What's the?
McIntyre School of Commerce?
No.
Walden Cooper Center?
Walden Cooper, thank you.
Hamilton Lombard, great squash player.
Yeah, I reach out to them to see if they can help me out to figure out if they have an availability of data to figure out what the average age, similar to what this national data is, how many people are boomers buying, so forth and so on. They haven't returned my phone call, but we're working on it to find out what it is. Boomers are moving here because of UVA. Boomers are moving here because they can go to the vineyards. Boomers are moving here because
two medical systems.
Two medical systems, which is extremely important when you get to be of a certain age.
Oh, my parents moved to where they moved because of medical systems.
But I can hop on a plane. I got a bunch of nonstops to New York out of Charlottesville. I'm 45 minutes from Richmond, which is turning into a hot spot. I'm 2 hours away from D.C., right? I'm 2 hours away from the beach so I can work on my tan.
You do tan well.
Thank you very much.
It's the Italian.
It's the Italian.
Yeah.
The Irish.
Half Irish, half Italian.
Yeah,
I can finish your sentences for you.
It's scary. Yeah. Winter Smith is Irish. Summer Smith is Italian.
Tans very well.
Thank you. Or you can be up in the mountains hiking in 45 minutes. It's an unbelievable area to tap into that. The boomer market's going to keep on coming in here, keep on pushing it. It's what we do. It's how I butter my bread. It's how I pay for my tan, right, and all this stuff. And I'm not trying to diminish that, but that pressure is constantly going to come. Does that buyer really care if UVA's not getting its cost of living?
No.
At the moment, it doesn't. Yeah. But when the medical services drop, it will.
Yeah. How are the medical services
I don't
going to
know.
drop?
So if
medical services aren't going to drop. Medical services are the engine that runs UVA.
100%.
Without UVA health system, UVA cannot be UVA.
But I know this much because I have families that.
But here's the thing:
let me finish this. I have family members that are doctors. I have family members.
You're saying if they freeze the income with the health providers, are they going to leave the health system? No.
Go someplace else.
UVA health system has the leverage over its employees. You know what that leverage is?
No. I'm talking about the market, right? And
if you're a UVA,
it's interesting. You probably covered this on one of your noon shows. They very quietly have gotten away from the traveling nurses world. Have you noticed that?
Oh, I know they have. Yeah.
And they're now into the employee world. They made this transition a couple of years ago.
Yeah, because they had to be more mindful of the bottom line. The traveling nurse was too expensive. Now they're asking personnel to do more with less.
And I had somebody a couple of years ago going, "Oh, you got to go buy some units and just rent them to travel nurse." I said, "I'm not so sure that's going to last so long." Yeah. And it didn't. They still have some, but it's not at the level.
If you're a super deluxe cardiovascular surgeon, where are you going to go find a job to be a super deluxe cardiovascular surgeon if it's not UVA Health? The health system has these people by the short and curlies, and they know that. Where are they going to go to be a super deluxe cardiovascular surgeon?
I
seriously mean that.
I'm not an expert on that. My son-in-law is, right?
Where are they going to go?
Yeah, but he had an opportunity to go to UVA, and he picked Richmond instead. So
Well, part of that was also your daughter's influence.
And plus, I don't think they didn't want to be around me. But they
weren't going to live at the lake.
They weren't. No,
they weren't going to live at the lake.
No. But yes, there's a shortage in doctors and all this kind of great stuff. So all I'm saying is, if the UVA behemoth, whatever it is, right? Have you ever heard of this group that UVA calls OLLI? Have you ever heard of OLLI?
OLLI?
Yeah, so OLLI is a program that UVA has. I've been asked to actually teach a few classes for it. It's this system that they have, they do classes, about world history, housing, all these different things. And they used to be at the Studio X park, and they ran out of room, and they're growing, and these classes are packed with a bunch of gray hairs. They come down here, they move, they want to stay engaged, they want to walk to coffee, they want to walk to booze.
I think you meant brew pubs.
No, I meant booze.
You didn't mean brew pubs there?
Brew pubs or whatever it is. But yeah, all I'm saying, if there's a major hiccup there, right, that's our economic engine, right? There are other ones now, but that's our primary economic engine. It could impact things down.
This is my take. I am not.
By the way, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for what you do.
I am not concerned with the Central Virginia economy as a whole. I am concerned of certain facets of the Central Virginia economy. I'm concerned with the food and beverage category. I'm concerned with the craft spirits category. Liquor, beer, and wine, I'm concerned about. There's 30 vineyards and wineries in the Commonwealth of Virginia currently for sale.
I can tell you.
30, folks.
I can tell you we've overproduced that.
We've been saying that in the I Love CVille Network. I caught serious flack for saying that.
It's true.
I said we did too many. I'm concerned with people that
I can list off a half a dozen just in this area that get zero traffic.
Whitehall straight up closed. Mm-hmm. It was in the Daily Progress. It's closed.
Cunningham Creek and
there's multiple ones that are for sale right now. Yeah. Name brands, known commodities.
Well, it's
breweries as well, off market.
So it's kind of like wrap it back to housing. It's kind of like the conversation we've been having, right? We've overbuilt multifamily in this country, and we kind of do this, right?
Yeah. The American loves to hop on a bandwagon,
and hey, this is 20 years ago. Hey,
first to market gets slaughtered. Second, third, fourth to fifth to market wins. Everybody after that gets slaughtered.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely, Dan Pennant. Absolutely squashed today.
But that's, hey guys, except for squash.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions coming in.
But 100%. But that's business, right? It doesn't matter if you're making widgets, cars, grapes, or building houses and
selling houses, realtors.
Selling houses.
But how many hopped on the bandwagon during COVID?
But that are
on the soup line right now.
I actually got a stat that I wasn't going to share today. I'll talk about that in a minute about how many percentage of real estate agents that done one or more units of sale in the first quarter.
Stanbird Winery closing next week, Neil Williamson says.
Yeah.
Neil Williamson, very smart man, exits his position at Well Hung Vineyards. No longer a partner at Well Hung Vineyards.
I was going to make
you and I are one of a kind.
I was going to make an off-color remark, Neil, but I've decided.
It's the family talk show.
I've decided.
Well Hung Vineyards, he's no longer a partner. I can assure you that
it wasn't for that reason.
Neil has heard the off-color remarks with Well Hung Vineyards. He's no longer a partner right there.
Neil, I'm very proud of myself.
Didn't you just kind of make it?
I did.
By not making it and highlighting the fact that you didn't make it. Didn't you make it?
So isn't that called a skill?
Didn't you make it?
Isn't it called a skill? It's called a skill. I didn't know. Yeah, so we've overbuilt. Now, try to take this back to housing, and Neil will like this. We've underbuilt housing, right?
Well, Neil straight up said, I heard Neil talking about Biscuit Run Park. He's like, we have a development area of 5% in Albemarle County. And of that 5%, we can't utilize the full 5% because the topography doesn't allow the full 5% to be developed. And then we took significant acreage out of the development area with Biscuit Run Park by offering tax breaks to the super wealthy during the time of great unpleasantness. He says, what gives, Neil Williamson says?
And you're missing another one. We put a lot of industrial stuff in that, or commercial stuff in that.
No, industrial. We put a lot of commercial retail,
that kind of thing in it. So that's kind of took it out. But that's a fight that everybody's in the middle of fighting, and we'll see how it goes. But we've done the opposite, right? We've overbuilt, in my opinion. Not only my opinion, it's the lender's opinion, and that's what matters, right? You can't get money from multifamily projects right now, national money, which migrates to here unless you're using cash. We've overbuilt it. Not only did we overbuild multifamily, we overbuilt luxury multifamily, right? Missing the missing middle, which Neil would like that term in it. But we didn't do anything in the middle. We don't have any single family detached, or we have some coming in there on it. And back to Neil's home county, I had a conversation with two of his board of supervisors last night at a commission meeting. We called this, and it's starting to happen. They're up to somewhere around 38 to 40 new construction units in Greene County from the beginning of the year to now that are either already closed or impending. Most of them are impending. They started selling pretty hard, namely Creekside. I'll bet a bottle of bourbon by the time we do I'll lose usually. But at the end of this year,
We're gonna take some bet. I like bet.
yeah. Well, I just
like
bought.
gambling.
I bought a brute new one.
I know
the,
you did.
for
I
the-
like gambling.
Yeah. You won't take this.
What's
because,
the prop at?
Yeah, you won't take it. I think by the end of this year, you're going to see in Greene County either sold or in pending, meaning they're in the middle of being built and close 200 units by the end of this year.
I wouldn't take that bet.
You don't think there'll be 200 units?
No, I think there will be.
Yeah. So I think
I know there will be.
Yeah, I think it's going to be closer to 250. That's kind of, if you want to take a bet, it's like how close do you want to get to 300?
Yeah.
But it'll be
We
between.
know that's happening.
Yeah. Whatever.
We're
I'm trying to win a bet here. I'm trying to win a freaking bet.
This guy's trying to rig the game over here.
I'm trying to rig the game. I'm trying to win the bet. I don't win very often. I'm just trying to do the best I can.
Jason Howard's got a great comment here. This is a great comment for a talk show. He's the mayor of Rio Road. He says, in our market, if the population continues to shift to boomers, this is a good one for you, Judah. In our market, if the population continues to shift to boomers, what businesses come to service that demographic? The young millennials need daycares, bounce and plays, other things geared toward kids and being young parents. What do boomers need in our market? What's the trend and the smart
So I'm going to
business
add,
play?
before you answer that, I'm going to add one part to that, and of having conversations with some of my local elected officials about this. And Neil, I would need help on it. But for the most part, across the board in our jurisdiction, student population is going down. And it's going down because
Public school population.
public school population.
Private school population is not, though.
Well, it's because the income's going up and
Yeah.
people can afford it. But my conversation is, well, hold the time out. You've got new schools. You've got schools you got to maintain. You've got a certain amount of teachers you've got to maintain. If your student count's coming down,
This really applies to Fluvanna County.
and Nelson,
Yeah. Fluvanna County, as Fluvanna County is becoming more expensive to live, what's moving into Fluvanna County is an older demographic that does not have kids. It's more empty nesters. So the student population at FCPS, Fluvanna County Public Schools, is dropping. And a lot
I don't know
of
the exact number though.
A lot of the funding for Fluvanna County Public Schools is state and federal funding based on head count.
And the largest portion of that is state. Feds are not usually the
Right.
bigger number.
States
States is your.
That's a trend I would follow.
So that's the point I'm trying to make is if I'm now paying for these schools in my budget, we've got population decrease.
Especially how much money did Fluvanna just pay for that new school? What, within the last 10 years?
I think it was 72 million, but
It's a crazy amount.
I don't remember the exact number. Seems like around 72. But my point is all these pressures now going on that. I looked at the budget. They advertised it, Fluvanna County. I think it's somewhere around 10% increase or 9%, something like that, to go in it. But we want to answer his question, but I wanted to add to it the dynamic of if we have all these boomers coming in and student populations going down, what does that do in the overall scheme of things?
What's it do for the business profile?
Yeah, all I know is I spend more time answering phone calls from clients, current clients, past clients. I need a plumber. I need an electrician. I need somebody to do
Someone in the trades.
someone in the trades. I literally spend more time. It usually starts off, hey, you used to be in building. I need somebody, right? I spend more time talking about that than I talk about houses. I really do. I had 2 phone
I
calls
believe
on
you.
the
No,
way
I
in.
believe you.
And, we've talked about this on the show. We haven't brought it back up again. I think maybe some of the localities should spend a little bit more money on the vocational programs, maybe instead of other programs. But if you've got a plumber's license or electrician's license, you can pretty much write your own ticket, and you're going to be able to write it for a long time.
Michael Plecker watching the program.
Hey, Michael.
One of the Shenandoah Valley's finest backstops. A gentleman who played in the New York Mets farm system. He says, Northern Virginia slowly is creeping toward Warrenton and Culpeper. Yeah. And Culpeper is slowly creeping to Northern Virginia. Michael Plecker says, and remember, he did this before he was a key player on Yes Realty Partners. He was in the production game selling new construction. He says Stanley Martin and NVR. NVR is the luxury division of Ryan Holmes.
Well, I think NVR is the parent company. Then there's an NVR
luxury for Ryan,
and then there's a Ryan Holmes.
That's
so I
right.
think NVR is the corporate structure.
Stanley Martin and call it Ryan Holmes NVR, building 3,000 plus homes in Lytton Hall, just outside of Manassas, in what was once deemed the rural crescent and could never be developed at one time.
Well, this is what
Michael Plecker, good work.
You're flying until you
just threw out a runner at second base, trying to steal second on a knuckleball pitch from your pitcher, slowly delivered to home plate. But your arm strength and your quick release gunned the runner out at second base, Michael Plecker.
I'd pay money to see him do this right. Try to do that right now. That'd be
Michael Plecker was one of the Shenandoah Valley's finest backstops.
I know that. All right, hang on a second, folks. I'm going to let you talk for one more second.
Comments coming in quickly.
Why don't you get to them real quick? Because I want to do this, what the cash impact is.
Daniel Pettit answers Jason Howard's question. You're going to have more home care companies offering to come to your home for care. The Bombers direction? Is that the Boomers direction, DP? Mustache Dan Pettit watching the program. Love when Mustache Dan Pettit watches the show. You should see this man's forehand on a tennis court. Fundamentally sound. He's painting the lines and hitting winners left and right.
So while I take a look at this data real quick, I talked about this on the show about 2 years ago. I had a meeting with planning directors.
He was 1.7 seconds, Michael Plecker, from glove to glove. That's fast, Plecker.
I can believe that.
The quick release and his footwork allowed him to get the ball out of his hand quickly. And once the ball is at release point for Michael Plecker, God-given talent takes over. He is accurate and he is quick.
And that's from getting from squat to jump and throw, right?
1.7 seconds from glove to glove means,
So he
catches the ball.
He's got to stand.
He's throwing it to second base or third base.
But he's not throwing it from a squat position.
Some catchers have the arm strength and release where they can throw from a squat position.
You got to ask him if he.
Pudge Rodriguez was able to sit behind home plate, known for his talent with the Texas Rangers, where he won many a Gold Glove. He would often sit down behind home plate with the leg extended, and he could still gun base runners out at second and third base.
You are in a world that I'm just going to go, okay.
Pudge Rodriguez is a Hall of Famer, maybe the best catcher of all time. Maybe. I'm not saying he is. Keith Smith's crunching data. What would you?
There was 610 units closed from January 1 to today in the car footprint, which is Charlottesville, Albemarle, Nelson, Louisa, and Green. Did I get them all? Yeah, I did. 182 of them were cash. I have to work out the math.
Comments continue to come in.
Go ahead. Why don't you do that while I figure out the cash?
Viewers and listeners, let us know your thoughts. A lot that's coming in the feed. Still, we have bears on the feed saying prices cannot continue. We are in a bubble. Folks, if you think we're in a bubble, you're not watching Real Talk.
No, we're
not watching the I Love CVille show.
But what I think we're in, look, you know what? I'm going to shut up because I predicted last year that we were going to get balanced, more of a balanced 3 to 6% return. But we're on trajectory for double-digit increases. So, what the hell do I know?
Double-digit increases compounded versus the double-digit increases last year, the year before, and the year before that. From 2019 until now, home values have escalated 30, 40% easy. And in some cases, even more than that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. So it's right at 30%, 29.8%. So 30% of the transactions from the beginning of this year to now that have closed are 30%.
What's the number?
Cash, 30% cash.
1 out of 3 is cash.
So out of 610, and unless my math is wrong, out of 610, 182 were cash, and according to the calculator I'm looking at, that's 29.8% of 610. 1.82 is approximately 29.8% of 6, so call it 30%. 30% of the transactions.
That's a lot.
Well, it's been holding that way for the last couple of years, right? It's been around the 30 to 30. And we're actually, if we go do a little research, I believe we're beating the country. The country's probably in the lower 20s.
I'm sure we're beating the country.
On that end of it, but we shall see. Look, I mean, when I look at this here and look at,
Judy, you putting that on screen?
thank you, Judah. When I look
Thank
at
you, sir.
42, thank you, Judah. 42% of the buyers are boomers, right? We've got a 24% drop of millennials, which means the millennials aren't going anywhere. They're growing. That profile is growing. That pool is growing. And it's just going to put so much pressure on the system. And everybody wants to be here. Somehow or another, we've got to figure out a way to create something for these people to go. I know that's a bigger conversation, and we're past our time here, but you know, I'm going to continue to try to advocate that, because I think we're just going to constantly get pressure on it. Prices are continually to increase. The younger folks that we're working with, the millennials we're working with, we're extremely fortunate. I love working with millennials. I've said this for the whole show. The 6 years I've been doing this, I love working with millennials. I've found what they do is they put this down very quickly, and they look at my gray hair and they say, help us. And they listen. They're educated, right? They understand the system. They're walking into possibilities of buying, realistically understanding it. They understand where they are in the world on this. And then there goes, okay, let's create a plan so we can get there. Let's bring a ton of patience, a little bit of cocktail every once in a while, because you're going to need to go, oh boy, and then have a little bit of caffeine to get you jolted back up again. We're not pushing drugs on the show, but in any event,
Caffeine's a good drug.
it is, yeah. Alcohol is too.
Yeah.
But in any event, so that's what you need. I was going good, then I went downhill. But stay in the fight, guys, because if you buy today and you think in 5 years from now your house is going to be worth less than it is now, that is flat out wrong.
Flat out wrong.
Flat
out wrong.
Flat out wrong.
And don't buy.
And we've been saying this for 6 years. That's flat out wrong.
JB Turner says, I echo what Michael Plecker, the Shenandoah Valley's finest backstop, is saying. Jamie Turner on one page, responding to Michael Plecker on another page. And the mayor of Gordonsville, who is repping the PEP right now in Culpeper, says, Culpeper has so many new communities popping up of all inventory types. I just wonder the impact of Washington's Doge, he's talking the layoffs, on this area, because most folks commute up north for work or work remotely with firms up north. And I've been highlighting.
It's twofold. It's the come back to work thing, and
it's what we said on the I Love CVille show.
And Doge.
I think we were first to market to say this.
And Doge. Micro markets matter. What's going to happen up there is going to happen up there in our 6 jurisdictions, and to include the other side of the hill. All it's going to do is put more pressure here, because they're going to leave. It's just what's going to happen. They're going to check out. They're going to sell their property. They're going to take their cash out on it, and they're going to come knocking on the door, and they're going to be that's the whole reason I was doing today, this generational tug of war. And they're going to be looking for the same exact stuff my millennial buyers are trying to buy. And, you know, they're going to be coming in, if not with full cash, 50%. They're going to be coming down with some huge chunk of cash. And, you know, we just got to keep on, you know, as Michael Plecker taught me, you don't win a baseball game by trying to put the ball over the home run.
By trying to hit home runs. You don't win a baseball game by playing long ball. Although analytics of late would suggest otherwise, Michael Plecker.
Well, he's
going to say you play some small ball, you put the ball in play, you move base runners around the bags.
You play the percentages.
No.
You know, the percentages of...
Torpedo bats would say otherwise.
Oh, the new bats?
Yeah, Yankees and the torpedo bats playing the long... Chicks dig the long ball.
Yeah,
this is my cup of tea.
This is your cup of tea. This is... Do you want to talk biking? I'll talk biking, but that's what I want to talk. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Unless we're ready to wrap up.
Yeah,
right?
we absolutely. How about some closing thoughts for the viewers and listeners?
I got some business I got to do here. I wanted to have this boomer, this millennial, this generational thing, right?
We did it. It was great. Show's on fire.
I've been talking about it, and now the data's proven it. You know, but stay in the fight, folks. I have to tell you, I'm super encouraged from this side of the table. Everybody that's in that millennial boat that I'm helping with we trust you. You're our trusted advisor. We're in the fight. Let's go. They want to fight. They want to make this happen. So, it's an honor to help people do that. It's also an honor to help people retire and move on.
Keith Smith, Yonna Smith, Real Talk with Keith Smith, presented by Yes Realty Partners. Yes Realty Partners. Visit them online. The website is absolutely fantastic. Some of the people that are the most trusted people in the game we call real estate. Yes Realty Partners. Judah Wickhauer behind the camera. For Keith and Judah, my name is Jerry Miller. The I Love CVille show in 1 hour and 9 minutes at 12:30. So long, everybody.
Thanks. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.